which is the third private astronaut mission to the International Space Station. We are providing live coverage of the hatch closure, which is scheduled to take place in about 15 minutes from now at 6:15 a.m. Central, 7:15 a.m. Eastern Time. Our coverage will take a break after the hatch closure, and we will be back on air to cover Dragon Freedom's departure from the International Space Station. Thank you for joining us. This is Mission Control Houston. The Axiom Mission 3 crew includes Mission Commander Michael López-Alegría, who was also the commander for Axiom Mission 1, which was the first private astronaut mission to the International Space Station. Also on the Axiom 3 crew is pilot Walter Villadei of Italy, mission specialist Marcus Wandt of Sweden, and mission specialist Alper Gezeravcı of Turkey. Both Alegría and Villadei are already suited and proceeding on time for hatch close. After hatch closing, which is currently scheduled for 6:15 a.m. Central, 7:15 a.m. Eastern, undocking will occur at 8:20 a.m. Central, 9:20 a.m. Eastern. This is a 15-minute shift and a 1-hour window that was available for undock today. Teams analyzed available communications and decided to shift about 15 minutes to ensure solid KU and S-band. This slight shift will have no impact to deorbit or splashdown currently planned for Friday, February 9th. Splashdown is expected to occur at 7:30 a.m. Central, 8:30 a.m. Eastern on Friday, February 9th off the coast of Florida.
SpaceX Freedom on the big loop, comp check.
Freedom, SpaceX has you loud and clear. How me?
77. Be with you this morning. Say hi to everybody.
We're happy to hear your voices. Looking forward to undock today.
The crew is
Houston Station on 2 for Dragon departure prep.
Jaws with you on 2.
I just want to make sure I am currently just waiting for LIO configuration. I'm holding, correct? I'm not doing any actions yet.
Affirm, Jaws, we need that complete before you can step into your actions. And for stowage, we are good with your plan for the 5 bags in PMA2.
Okay, copy. I'll move those 5 bags.
You just heard the voice of NASA astronaut Jasmine Mogbelli, along with the Capcom or capsule communicator here on the ground, William Vu. Mogbelli, who is part of Expedition 70, currently aboard the International Space Station, is helping the Axiom 3 crew through some procedures this morning ahead of hatch closure and undocking. Flight controllers here in Houston are currently being led by Flight Director Jed Freeling in Mission Control, and they're working alongside the SpaceX team in their Mission Control Center in Hawthorne, California. You also heard the crew on the space station refer to the big loop. Right now, teams are working to configure the big loop, which is an integrated communications loop with the NASA mission control team, SpaceX's mission control team, and also the crew aboard the International Space Station, as well as the crew in the Axiom Mission 3 Dragon. This big loop allows fully integrated communications with Dragon Freedom as the crew undocks and makes its way back to Earth. Right now, you're seeing a live view inside the Dragon capsule as the crew continues to work through those hatch closure procedures. After the hatch is closed in about 10 minutes, depressurization of the vestibule will take place. The vestibule is the area between the hatch on the Dragon spacecraft and the APAS hatch of the International Space Station. The entire vestibule depressurization process takes about an hour. Following depressurization, there will be a final no-go poll for undocking about 10 minutes before the undocking command is scheduled to be sent. And this is where the joint NASA and SpaceX teams will have the opportunity to make their final go for Dragon to depart the station. Once teams are go for Dragon's departure, an undock command will be sent for the undocking sequence to actually begin. The sequence is entirely autonomous and takes about 5 minutes to complete. The undock command is currently scheduled for 8:15 a.m. Central, 9:15 a.m. Eastern. The first step in this undocking sequence is for the umbilicals to retract. These umbilicals connect Dragon systems to the space station, transferring power, telemetry, and commands between the vehicles throughout Dragon's stay. Once that's complete, Dragon will unlatch itself from the space station by releasing 12 hooks in 2 sets of 6. After that, Dragon will begin to push itself away from the station, executing 2 short thruster firings called undock burns, and physical separation is currently planned for 8:20 a.m. Central, 9:20 a.m. Eastern. Right now, you're seeing live views of the Axiom Mission 3 crew as they get suited up and into the Dragon Freedom spacecraft for their departure home.
Houston Station, I'll switch on 2 for cargo.
With you on 2 for cargo.
All right, we'd also like to put a 1.0 suitcase, that's Barrett suitcase 4269 into PMA2, if that's okay.
Checking. Andy, we are good with that plan.
SpaceX Freedom.
And go ahead, Dragon.
SpaceX Freedom, we're in 2.10 of 2.103. Dragon cabin config for departure is complete and looking for your go in 3.1 and LIO config in 3.4.
And copy, Dragon, you are complete in 2.10. We will be installing LIO cartridge number 2.
Okay, cartridge 2. Do we have a go for that?
And that's affirmative, MLA. You are go for LIO cartridge install.
Right now you're seeing a view inside Dragon of Axiom Mission 3 crew member Marcus Wandt as he works to configure the vehicle for hatch closing, and also he will soon get his suit on.
SpaceX Freedom, LIO configured at 1212 GMT.
SpaceX copies 1212 UTC.
Copy.
You've been hearing some chatter about some LiO canisters. These are lithium hydroxide canisters for CO2 absorption. Following this reconfiguration of the LiO canisters, the hatch close will be shortly after that once all crew members are in the vehicle and getting ready for their departure.
Affirm Jaws, that's in the Part 2 cabin configuration activity.
The SpaceX Dragon spacecraft for the Axiom Mission 3 mission launched atop a Falcon 9 rocket from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida on January 18th and docked to the International Space Station on January 20th. The crew has spent about 18 days in space working on over 30 experiments and bringing 550 pounds of science and hardware back to Earth. This is the third private astronaut mission to the space station. During their stay on the International Space Station, the crew was accompanied by the Expedition 70 crew, which remains on board following Axiom Mission 3's crew's departure. Expedition 70 is made up of NASA astronauts Jasmine Mogbelli and Laurel O'Hara, ESA, or European Space Agency astronaut Andy Mogensen, and JAXA, or Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Satoshi Furukawa, as well as Roscosmos cosmonauts Konstantin Borisov, Oleg Kononenko, and Nikolai Chub. The next crew to launch to the station is Crew 8, which is currently scheduled for late February, with Crew 7 returning a short time later after a handover period. The Crew 8 mission will carry NASA astronauts Matthew Dominic and Michael Barrett, Jeanette Epps, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gurbenkin.
SpaceX Freedom, could you confirm which of the timelines we should be using?
Hey, good question, Dragon. I was actually just trying to find a time to brief you. We will be using the Daytona ascending downrange timeline for 2024-02-09.
Ascending Daytona downrange. Copy. Thanks, sir.
And Dragon, I have some big picture updates on today's undocking if you're ready to copy.
Okay, copy.
So the great news, Dragon, is that the weather for our splashdown opportunity at Daytona is looking very good, and we're on track to undock today. I already mentioned which timeline we're using. One update, we are expecting the undocking time to be 1415 Zulu to make sure we have good comm coverage. How copy so far?
Copy all, good weather. The timeline you just gave us and undock is now 1415 Zulu.
Good readback. Dragon is looking healthy, and we're continuing with our configure for undock. We'll let you know if anything comes up.
Yeah, thanks.
You can now see views inside the Dragon Freedom spacecraft as Marcus Wandt and Alper Gezeravcı start to make their way inside their suits and join Michael López-Alegría.
For JAWS and departure prep.
Join Michael López-Alegría and Walter Villadei inside the spacecraft.
Hey, JAWS, letting you know that the LIO actions are complete. You can begin step 3.6 and 2.103.
We also heard some communication between the Axiom Mission 3 crew and the teams here on the ground, confirming the updated undocking time. The undock command is now scheduled to be sent at 8:15 a.m. Central, 9:15 a.m. Eastern, and this undock command is about a 15-minute or 5-minute automatic sequence that leads to a physical separation at 8:20 a.m. Central, 9:20 a.m. Eastern. There was also some additional communication between Jasmine Mobelli on the International Space Station as she continues to work through some hatch closure procedures. They have finished configuring the LIO canisters and are working to prepare to close the Dragon hatch.
SpaceX Freedom, we're ready to close the Dragon hatch.
Copy, Emily. Stand by a sec. Okay, Dragon, we were just confirming a few things. You are go to proceed with hatch closure per the cue card.
Work.
And we just heard a call up to crew that they are go to close the Dragon hatch. In between Dragon's hatch and the space station hatch, which is called the APAS hatch, is what is called the vestibule. Once the vestibule, or once the hatches is closed, they will begin a depressurization process of this vestibule to take it down to vacuum, which takes about an hour. We are currently going through a brief but expected loss of signal, or LOS, as the communication system changes satellites.
SpaceX Freedom, forward Dragon hatch is closed.
SpaceX copies. Forward hatch closed.
And we just heard confirmation that the Dragon hatch is closed.
And Dragon SpaceX on the big loop.
For Dragon.
Dragon, we have configured for hatch closed. You are go for your crew actions in the hatch closed event detail and to continue suit donning per 4.010.
The PPRV ISO valve is confirmed open.
Hatch closure was confirmed.
And SpaceX copies. And Dragon, for awareness, we're still working through our C2V2 configuration. We'll let you know when that's done so we can actually perform the big loop comm checks and then Dragon to ground comm checks.
Hatch closure was confirmed at 6:25 a.m. Central, 7:25 a.m. Eastern. The depressurization process of the vestibule will begin to take place shortly. The vestibule is the area between the hatch on the Dragon spacecraft and the APAS hatch of the International Space Station. This entire depress process takes about an hour. Following depressurization, there will be a final go, no-go poll approximately 10 minutes before the undocking command is scheduled to be sent. This is a point where the joint NASA and SpaceX teams can make their final call for Dragon to depart station and head home. Once teams are go for Dragon's departure, an undock command will be sent for the undocking sequence to actually begin. This sequence is entirely autonomous and takes about 5 minutes to complete. The undock command is currently scheduled for 8:15 a.m. Central, 9:15 a.m. Eastern, and the first step in this sequence is for the umbilicals to retract. These umbilicals connect Dragon's system to the space station, transferring power, telemetry, and commands between the two vehicles throughout Dragon's stay. Once that's complete, Dragon will unlatch itself from the space station by releasing 12 hooks and 2 sets of 6, and after that, Dragon will begin to push itself away from station by executing 2 short thruster firings called undock burns. Physical separation of the vehicle from space station is currently planned for 8:20 a.m. Central, 9:20 a.m. Eastern. Following this physical separation, there will then be a series of departure burns to increase the speed that Dragon is moving and also help push it further away from the space station and send it on its way home. Splashdown is currently expected to take place at 7:30 a.m. Central, 8:30 a.m. Eastern on Friday, February 9th off the coast of Daytona, Florida. For those of you who are just joining us, the Axiom Mission 3 crew is safely and securely inside the Dragon Freedom vehicle awaiting their departure from the space station. For the Axiom 3 crew, it's been a busy 2 weeks aboard the space station, packed with research and outreach activities, and during their stay they were accompanied by the Expedition 70 crew, which will remain on board following Axiom 3's departure later today. The SpaceX Dragon spacecraft for the Axiom Mission 3 crew launched atop a Falcon 9 rocket from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida on January 18th and then docked to the International Space Station on January 20th. They've spent about 18 days in space and are about to make their way home. We are currently live in the International Space Station Flight Control Room in Mission Control Houston at NASA's Johnson Space Center. The NASA team here is responsible for the safety of the crew on board the space station as well as the station itself. Our flight director here in the room today is Judd Freeling. Freeling was part of the 2013 class of flight directors. As was in the Apollo era, the flight director has the utmost responsibility and authority of operations at the moment. Next to our flight director is the CAPCOM, or Capsule Communicator, William Vu. The CAPCOM serves as the voice link between teams on the ground and the station crew. Again, we are in a brief but expected LOS, or loss of signal. We should be gaining views back of the space station in about a minute. LOSs occur when the Tracking and Data Relay Satellite System, or TDRS, has a handover between satellites. These satellites relay signals between spacecraft, including the International Space Station, and ground control stations on Earth. We're getting a special view right now of two Dragons docked to the International Space Station. This is a view
Freedom,
from the...
Houston, stand by for big loop audio config.
This is a view from the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency's module camera which is a camera aboard the International Space Station. There are multiple ports on board station for visiting vehicles to dock to. 5 spacecrafts are currently docked to the space station, including the Dragon Endurance and Freedom, which you see on your screen now, as well as the Soyuz MS-24 and the Progress 85 and 86 spacecraft. On the forward port of the Harmony module is Dragon Freedom, which has carried Crew 4, Axiom Mission 2, and now the Axiom Mission 3 crew to space and is heading back home today. The other Dragon is docked to the Harmony Zenith port, which is Dragon Endurance, and has carried NASA's SpaceX Crew 7 to the station and docked on August 27, 2023. NASA's Commercial Crew Program has enabled the United States.
Successful intercom checks for 5.2 and 4.010.
SpaceX copies. And stand by for big loop audio, and then we can do that big loop comm check. Probably about 5 minutes.
NASA's Commercial Crew Program has enabled the United States to once again launch astronauts from American soil and is bolstering a commercial space industry where the agency will become just one of many customers. Again, the hatch on the Dragon Freedom spacecraft closed this morning at 6:25 a.m. Central, 7:25 a.m. Eastern. And we will be back on air at 8 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Eastern for live coverage of the undocking and departure of the Axiom Mission 3 crew, which is the 3rd private astronaut crew to the International Space Station. In between now and then, the vestibule will begin a depressurization process to take it down to vacuum and prepare for departure of the Dragon Freedom vehicle. We are still looking good for an undocking at 8:20 a.m. Central, 9:20 a.m. Eastern for the Axiom Mission 3 crew, which launched to the International Space Station on January 18th. Following their 2-week stay, they are currently preparing to depart the International Space Station and just completed the hatch closure procedures and are continuing to don their suits and prepare for an undocking later today. We will take a break in our coverage for now while they go through the depressurization process of the vestibule, and we will be back on air at 8 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Eastern. Until then, this is Mission Control Houston.